Just a few years ago, Gina Loudon was a young, impressionable college student on her way to becoming the pride of her progressive college professors. Late one night, away from the supervision of the college faculty, in a freak accident, she was exposed to an overdose of common-sense conservatism. Since then, she has spent every waking moment unlearning everything she was programmed to believe during her college indoctrination. Join her in her re-education. This is the Dr. Gina Show.
You're coming into my house?
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Go get a real job.
Three-letter word, jobs, J-O-B-S.
The president and the first lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen.
They don't get a pass because they're young and stupid.
16 ounces is the maximum that they would be able to serve in one cup. If you want to order 2 cups at the same time, that's fine. It's your choice.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Where do they come up with this stuff?
This is the Dr. Gina Show.
Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show. The stack, let me show you this for those of you watching. The stack of stuff that I get from Joe Messina every week grows and grows. He sends me the craziest stuff, the way our culture is just losing its mind, and the stuff you won't hear anywhere else. That is, of course, my next guest, Joe Messina. The craziness just grows and grows. Does it not, Joe Messina?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. And you want to have Jason always cue up the sound of a toilet flushing, because that's exactly where society's heading, right into the toilet.
It's so true.
I almost got sick
do you just
this
want to
weekend.
Do you just, yeah, really? Do you just, someone showed me, I think my daughter, or maybe it was Jason or my husband, somebody I saw at some point at some party over the weekend walked up to me with a tweet of Lady Gaga's unfathomable. This woman, and I know exactly who it was. It was actually a friend of our family, and he showed me this, and he walked up to me, and he's a 20-something set, and he said to me, "Can you believe this?" And I said, "You know what? That woman will win every time by raising the bar on the level of audacity, and this is what we've demanded, though, as an audience." What she did was, and we need to get that out of the way in case someone's been hiding under a rock, as I kind of tend to do on the weekends. I can't blame you for that. You got to have a break. You got to decompress sometimes. She used the words "land of the free" and "the home of the gay." She is rewriting our national anthem, along with using the gay flag in place of the American flag. Now, I have to say, I ended up. This is really funny. I ended up in our gay neighborhood. In Hillcrest at dinner the night the SCOTUS decision came out. They don't have all the information on what really happened with those SCOTUS decisions, because we have that coming up on the Dr. Gina Show here in a little while. But they thought this was an unequivocal, unparalleled victory for the progs who advocate the gay takeover of our nation. And it's really not even the gay takeover. It's really just the leftist agenda takeover, because I have a lot of gay friends who were not in favor of this. But I ended up behind the parade, Joe. I promise you, behind the police car, and could not get parking even to meet my friends for dinner downtown San Diego here. Tell us how this has been received, this Lady Gaga rewrite of the flag and the national anthem.
Oh, they were cheering her. I mean, first of all, I got to say, if anybody's got a picture of Dr. Gina behind that gay parade, I'll give you $500 for it, because I will have a field.
I just made money on that.
I will have a field day with that picture. I'll have some fun with that. Anyway, the Lady Gaga. Now think about something. This is the young lady. Every teenage girl has one of her songs, one of her MP. I was going to say record, but that would make me really old. Has one of her songs or an MP3 or something of hers, right? What's her record? Thank you, Jason. Can we replace him? So Lady Gaga, they love her. They just think she's so wonderful. The stuff that she wears, you parents who let your kids look up to her.
Stop it. No, I know. Go ahead. Sorry.
You know where I'm going with that, right? But I mean, come on. Look at what she wears. Look what she did to the national anthem. She brought out the gay, what is that, a gay flag or gay lesbian, whatever, the rainbow flag. in place of the American flag, and then rewrote our national anthem for the land of the free and the home of the gay, and the place went crazy.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's a new and I have to tell you, I try to stay very open-minded, especially where music is concerned, because and I've been criticized before because I've used Lady Gaga bumpers. Let's just get that out of the way. But you know, for me, reaching out to this generation is so important. But I will say this: the progressives and the way that there are no boundaries of decency whatsoever anymore, Joe, make it very difficult to do all of this with a straight face, especially the rap groups. They've really gone over to where my husband's like, I can't stand this music on the car, Gina, you have to turn it off. But Lady Gaga, she pushed me right off the edge now. I loved a couple of her songs. This is something that that I cannot support anything she does ever again.
But this is at her character. Look at and again, you've got the button in front of you, but we do this with our sports figures too.
Yeah.
You know, we hold them up with such high esteem. They come off with stuff like this, and we let them get away with it. We let ladies like her get away with it. You know what? Stop buying her albums, people. Stop supporting these people, and they may feel this way, but she's not. You know, you take a few $1 million out of her pocket, she's gonna stop saying this stuff in public because it's all about the money.
Well, exactly, and right in keeping with that, there is a New Mexico newspaper who put up a picture of, and this is hard to describe. I'll show it to our viewers, but I don't know if they'll be able to see it. But they put up a picture of the Virgin Mary basically dancing in a bikini, a string bikini, with a bunch of men at some sort of, it almost looks like a peep show. Quite disturbing, especially, well, it should be disturbing to anyone, but especially to Catholics. What has happened with that story?
Forget what's happened with the story as much as we have more respect for the gay and lesbian movement than we do for basic religion. We have no more respect for people of faith. The further out there you are, the more respect we have for you. You're more of a hero. You're right. This Santa Fe reporter created an uproar when they it's a summer guidebook, okay? And on that summer guidebook, it's just shy of, what is that? Women Gone Wild? What is that that show?
Girls Gone Wild.
Oh, she's got a margarita in one hand. She's got this cowboy kind of doing stuff over her shoulder kind of thing. It's just amazing to me, and we're supposed to be okay with that. And they said that their intent was not to offend anybody. So my comment here is that their IQ level's at a negative 0.73. How could you not expect? Where's the picture of Muhammad?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You really think you wouldn't offend anybody? Have Muhammad sitting there doing her toes or something. How's that? All right?
Yeah.
No, they would never do something like that.
Yeah, where we have gone in this culture, absolutely true. Now,
bunch of cowards.
Part of the reason too is, you know, you look at Obama, and well, it's good to be king, and as you said, and Obama called, first of all, this is upsetting for two reasons. One, he called the press corps his press.
That's right.
I mean, that's a big admission. At least he's finally admitting, Joe, that this is
He's
really
telling the truth. You know, you don't get that often. Let's give him thank you for telling the truth, Mr. President.
And but he told them to behave, as perhaps I, being a mom, or you being a dad, might say to our children. Now, my little press corps, behave now. Tell us about this.
Yeah. Americans, behave yourself, he said during a joint press conference with South African President Jacob Zuma. You know, Mr. Zuma has his press very much in his pocket, okay? They don't ask the they don't ask questions outside the boundary.
Right.
All right? And he has his press corps, and he actually said to the president, your press is a little out of hand.
Your press.
So
my press
your
and
press.
Your press. As dictators, we know these things.
You beat me to the punch. That's exactly what I was going to say. My press, you know, my radio, my media. I mean, think about that. And, you know, he's let that known, you know, right out there in the open when he comes out and he says, there, you know, looks at them openly. He knows mics are on. Is he now to that point where he is not afraid to say anything because we're not going to hold him accountable for anything? And that he knows that we know? I mean, why hide it anymore, right?
Exactly. Well, and you move along, and you don't wonder how this happened to us when we have generations of people who have used all kinds of drugs, but the latest fad has been, Joe, that people in the 20-something set, I'm telling you, I talk to them all the time. Some of them I'm very close to, and this whole new use of the word cannabis and this marijuana is so harmless, and it's actually now, it has health benefits. Supposedly now it cures cancer, but apparently they're not reading the same studies you're reading. Joe, tell us about this.
Well, it cures cancer because you're too stupid to know you even have it anymore. That's the problem here. So what they found with chronic use of what we used to call dope, and we called it dope for a reason because it made you very dopey when you used it. Now they want to call it cannabis because it sounds so more, I don't know, what is that? More foresty, it's natural. Why would this be a problem? So there's a couple of studies that came out recently that I just think are wonderful to a degree. We'll see if anybody's paying attention. First of all, it'll cause brain inflammation. Not it may, but it does. Chronic use of dope causes brain inflammation.
Now let me stop you, Joe, because I'm sorry, I've had these arguments with people, and they say, well, that's different. That's not the medical cannabis. It's a new breed. All the bad stuff has been taken out.
It comes off the same tree.
Okay, I just want to tell you what
comes
they're thinking.
Off the same bush, people.
Apparently, pot is not the same thing as cannabis. All the bad has been taken out, and the cannabis only leaves the vitamins and minerals.
Oh, so they've taken all the THC out? Is that what they've done? Because that's the stuff that makes you a little loopy up there, right?
So it causes brain swelling, and it is lowering IQs. We've seen this.
See, that's the thing. If we get you young enough and we can lower your IQ, we can keep Obama in there for 6, 7, 8, 9, more elections.
Exactly.
So it lowers your IQ. This is the one I love too. It's tied to testicular cancer. This stuff is great for you, isn't it? Lowers your IQ, makes your brain swell. And what's the other one there? Lowers your IQ and makes your brain swell. Yeah, and it gives you testicular cancer. What every man wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute. The one I love the most.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going, right?
Yes.
They spent a lot of money on this, and I said for about $20,000, I would have done this study for them. It also makes co-eds who smoke pot more likely to have sex. Who knew? I mean, come on, really?
It really doesn't take a rocket scientist. This is like the 70s reinvented. This is nothing to do with anything new. There's no new, as Ecclesiastes says, I love that. There's nothing new under the sun, and this points exactly to that. So I guess folks need to look at these studies. How is it that these things are so deeply buried? If you just Google smoking pot, you get all the health benefits now, and that's what young people are doing. And so it's a scary time, though. I guess, if it takes them away from the legal alcohol, then they think it must be a good thing somehow that it's illegal, makes them feel rebellious to the police. I don't know. I just know that this is a big libertarian agenda item, and it's frightening to me when I'm reading these studies that apparently they're not aware of.
Yeah, they want to get the young kids. This is one way to do it. But, I noticed something this weekend when I was doing research for my own show, and I'm noticing more and more that when it comes to things like this dope smoking, when it comes to whether our country is a Christian nation or not, you go Google these kind of things that the conservatives hold near and dear, and you find out they're all false. When you look at the first 3 or 4 or 5 pages of Google, they're all false. We're a bunch of whacktoids. There is a movement afoot on the internet where most young people get their information to push all these basic and traditional thoughts out of the picture electronically. Mm-hmm. That's scary.
Yeah.
That's as scary as history being changed.
Yeah, exactly.
People you watch, in a couple of years, you won't be able to find any truth on this stuff.
Exactly. And it's so sad that we have to go through this every few years. One more thing I want to get to, and we are completely out of time, but this lead vaccine developer has come clean, said she cannot sleep at night because she knows, and people like you and I have been saying this forever, that Gardasil and Severix don't work, are dangerous, and weren't tested. This is freaky stuff. Tell us, Joe.
God bless this woman for not being able to sleep, and finally coming out and opening her mouth and saying something, and finally people were walking out of the speech there saying, my God, I don't want to use this on my daughter. You thank God for her, but what's happening now, right? These drug companies are coming down like a ton of bricks. They're trying to show that there's nothing wrong with this, and doctors are still pushing it for your young daughters and your young daughters and so forth. Mm-hmm. So. It's great that she came out. They're finding that this doesn't work, and most of the what is that called, the papilloma virus.
The HPV.
Yeah, it'll go away on its own in most cases. You don't need a vaccine for this.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not a
exactly
doctor.
right. But you also, the other thing that has caused so much HPV is the promotion of condom use, because condoms do not prevent viruses, including the human papilloma virus and including the HIV, right? And so, so people think, well, okay, so condoms are going to prevent. No, they don't prevent viruses. And so this is why anyone knows that a shield merely will sometimes, and by the way, this is a porous shield, so it's not even 100% effective. Of course, we all know, I think like 70% effective in preventing bacterial transmission, but it is not going to prevent the transmission of something that is viral. This is why, and I'm going to sound like the oldest person on the planet right now, this is why there's one answer. If you really don't want to join the ranks of most teenagers and most sexually active people who have some form of venereal disease, you have to take abstinence. Okay, we'll have to end on that, Joe, because we're so out of time. I know. You know, it's what works, and I think we need to talk about. I think we need to start framing things as conservatives, and this is Bill Whittle's idea, not my idea, in terms of what does work and what doesn't work. And abstinence works. Condoms don't work. They're the reason for the proliferation of all of the STDs we have out there. And until we start talking about what works and what doesn't work, we're just a bunch of stupid people repeating the same mistakes over and over again, which is the definition of idiots. So, Joe, thank you for being with us today. Thanks so much. I want people to find you on Twitter at Joe Messina, and also on the web at therealside.com. And thanks for being with us again, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it always have a good time.
Always my pleasure to be with you. Now, coming up today, we are going to go to your phone calls, and I'm very excited about that. 866-915-4809, 866-915-4809. You know that Sarah Palin opened the door to the idea of a new party. She called it the Freedom Party. She's suggesting that some people might be so fed up with the establishment GOP that they would leave the GOP and go to a new party called the Freedom Party. We've had a major debate on my Facebook page today. We're going to continue that conversation with your phone calls. 866-915-4809. Rev up those phone lines. 866-915-4809. Would you leave the GOP for a new party? And if so, what would you call it? 866-915-4809. Your calls coming up on the Dr. Gina Show.
Hi, this is Joe Dan Gorman of Intellectual Frog Legs. Ain't no liberals say I have every phobia out there. They say I'm a homophobe, an Islamophobe, even a Michelle Obamaphobe. Well, actually, I am kind of scared of her. So, with all these fruitcake phobias, I'm bound to be on my last leg. So you probably ought to hurry on over to intellectualfroglegs.com. See what Chuck Woolery's calling the best new media he's seen. That's intellectualfroglegs.com.
God, guns, and gear, the things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who would like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was founded over 35 years ago. Gun Owners of America is here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. Gun Owners of America has been called the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Join today at gunowners.org.
Do you support Obama's universal background check? This is Dr. Gina. I want you to go to gunowners.org right now and answer that important survey question. Gun Owners is the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, according to Ron Paul, and many others are finding the value of joining an organization like Gun Owners of America, who's been there and will be there with a no-compromise attitude. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org.
You're a troublemaker, troublemaker. You ain't nothing but a troublemaker, girl.
This is Andrew Breitbart of Breitbart.com and Big Government. Troublemaker, just like my longtime friend, Dr. Gina, Tea Party patriot. You're listening to the Dr. Gina Show.
Oh, troublemaker, yeah, that's your middle name. Oh, I know you know it, but you're stuck in my brain. Troublemaker.
And you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show. And it's good to be with you. Now, you probably heard the story about Sarah Palin floating the idea of leaving the Republican Party. This was quite a big deal. Shook up the foundation of those in our party with strong opinions. I've always had strong opinions on this as well. Although I tell you, as I watch Karl Rove and his shenanigans, I'm not going to say that I'm not sort of feeling some of the pain of some of you who are saying, heck yeah, heck yeah. I am so tired of what this establishment is doing to us as a party. Tired of choosing the lesser of two evils. Really tired of that. I'm tired of it too. And I've been doing it since a lot before some of you even woke up to politics, those of you who entered this realm with the Tea Party. Well, the story is this. Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, 2008, of course you remember, Republican nominee for vice president, responded to a Fox News Channel viewer's Twitter question Saturday about the possibility of her and conservative talker Mark Levin abandoning the Republican Party and creating something called the Freedom Party. And she suggested she is open to that idea, and that if the GOP continues to abandon its conservative principles, others would follow suit. I love the name of that party, the Freedom Party, Palin said, and if the GOP continues to back away from the planks in our platform, from the principles that built this party of Lincoln and Reagan, then yeah, more and more of us are going to start saying, you know, what's wrong with being independent? Kind of with that libertarian streak that much of us have. In other words, we want government to back off and not infringe upon our rights. I think there will be a lot of us who will start saying, GOP, if you abandon us, we'll have nowhere else to go except to become more independent and not enlisted in one or the other private majority party that rules our nation, either Democrat or Republican. Remember, these are private parties, and you know, no one forces us to be enlisted in either party. It's absolutely true. That's from Daily Caller, by the way. It's absolutely true that it has gotten more and more disillusioning. And I said in the next election, and I've continued to say, I am a lifelong Republican. I don't hide from that. I don't deny it. But I'll tell you what, they have pushed me just about beyond my bounds. As a conservative, I don't feel like I have a voice in the party. I haven't felt like I did. That's why I became a part of the Tea Party, which the entire purpose of the Tea Party, as you know, was to begin to look at these issues and say, hey, GOP, we're going to hold you accountable. Well, the GOP, the establishment GOP, the Karl Roves of the world have really done nothing except continue to promote this idea that the Tea Party is somehow crazy. Where have they jumped to our defense? That conservatives in general are crazy, despite the fact that the things we said have absolutely come true. It was conservatives who said that with a candidate like Mitt Romney, a.k.a. John McCain, a.k.a. Bob Dole, how far back do we have to go? We cannot win. It was us who said that. Did we ever get any mea culpa from Mitt Romney, from Karl Rove, from any of the rest of them? Did anyone ever say, you know what, maybe we should have, number one, discussed the social issues? By the way, I still maintain that the social issues are the issues that will bring the others, the minority groups that we don't connect well with now. It's not the issue of amnesty. We're not going to all of a sudden give people amnesty and have conservative business owners who happen to be Hispanic or black or other races, if you have to divide us up that way, which I don't believe you do. It's the colorblindness that will reunite this country. And it's the party that's colorblind that talks about issues and focuses on issues, not panders to certain groups of people. that will win in the next election. I believe that. So we should have been talking about social issues. We should have had a conservative candidate for president, a bona fide conservative, a fiscal and social conservative. We should have been willing to take the hit. We should not be afraid of the attacks of the left because they are going to attack us no matter what. We need to be big enough to learn that. So many of us were screaming that. And now they have themselves where we are in a position where we've seen ourselves lose and lose again, listening to the mantra of the establishment GOP, and we know it's not true. So the question becomes, would you support a new political party? And what would you call it? We're going to go to your calls pretty soon here, 866-915-4809, 866-915-4809. Is it time for a third party? Is it time for us to join together and say, enough GOP, let them win us back, if that's what they want to do. But to just lay down all the time and say, no, we're gonna take it in the gut again while you define for us who we are and lose race after race after race and tell us, well, it's the lesser of two evils. No, we're not going to have it any more. 866-915-4809 is the number. We'll be taking your calls on that. If we are to go to a new party, what would you call it? Some didn't like the Freedom Party. What do you think is a good name? Well, we've got some comments that you've sent to me, and we'll take your calls, 866-915-4809. When we come back, you're listening to The Dr. Gina Show.
Just a few years ago, Gina Loudon was a young, impressionable college student on her way to becoming the pride of her progressive college professors. Late one night, away from the supervision of the college faculty, in a freak accident she was exposed to an overdose of common-sense conservatism. Since then, she has spent every waking moment unlearning everything she was programmed to believe during her college indoctrination. Join her in her re-education. This is the Dr. Gina Show.
You're coming into my house?
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Go get a real job.
Three-letter word. Jobs. Jobs.
The president and the first lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen.
They don't get a pass because they're young and stupid.
16 ounces is the maximum that they would be able to serve in one cup. If you want to order 2 cups at the same time, that's fine. It's your choice.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Where did they come up with this stuff?
This is the Dr. Gina Show.
Hey, you're listening to the Dr. Gina Show. Lots of opinions. Wow. You all have strong feelings about a new party or not, right? Well, it's good to know that. And it's okay that we have this dialogue, and I think we need to go easy on each other for this. This isn't time to decide to vilify Sarah Palin because she, in my opinion, did a great job threatening the GOP with "we can." Don't forget we can. We're not bound to these two parties. We have a right to form a third party if that's what appeals to us. I have never advocated that. I've never advocated voting third party. I think it's a horrible idea. Third parties almost always lose. I devoted an entire several segments of this program when I still broadcasted from Alabama to the losing record of third parties historically. So this is not something that I'm advocating, so don't hate. But this is something that I think that the GOP needs to understand could happen if they continue to leave conservatives completely out in the cold. And you all are commenting like crazy. Alex says, yes, I would. Fred says, I would. DJ says, we need to roust the rhinos out of leadership positions in the RNC. That's true. I think that is where we start. But I think a lot of conservatives, though, DJ, feel like this. They feel like, you know, that's what we've tried to do for the last several years since the inception of the Tea Party. The Party of Common Sense is the name that Colleen thinks would be a good one. The Principles of Party is another suggestion. I saw Constitutional Conservative. Someone suggested, my internet's down right now. I can't even look at, this is all from memory. I can't even look at what you all are posting. But I saw the Constitutional Conservative Party, the Constitution Party, the Conservative Party. If we were going to go with, another party name, I think I would go with the Conservative Party. We'll take your calls, 866-915-4809. We're going to get to you. Steve says he'd rather kick the progressives out of our party. And this is kind of where I still stand as well, Steve. But I tell you what, I don't impugn Sarah Palin or others for considering the message to the GOP should be, we can leave. Don't forget, we're not slaves. We're not indentured servants. We can leave. We can make it impossible for you to be given back your power, because this is the thing. And if you've been inside of politics, you know this, that there are consultants in this business, and I don't begrudge anyone making money. I'm as capitalist as the rest of them. But with tools like term limits and other things, consultants have done an amazing job of giving themselves an inordinate amount of power. And Karl Rove is one of them, who has given himself so much power in all of this that it's almost impossible for Karl to ever lose in this situation. He made his millions, his tens of millions of dollars in the last race, whether Romney won or lost. He makes money down ticket. He makes money when lower level Republicans win or lose. He continues to make money. Did you know this? Because a lot of people, I think that these consultants like James Carville or Karl Rove only make money when their candidates win. There's almost always a win bonus, so that's true. And I've consulted on political campaigns. I don't deny anyone making any money. So let me get that out of the way. But I am a principled conservative who believes in my cause. And I don't believe that is the truth about Karl Rove. And I've said it here on the show many, many times. I think he's what's wrong with politics. I don't begrudge him making money. What I begrudge are the candidates who repeatedly use him as a consultant and pay him whether or not they win or lose, and his underlings, which is a very important part of this conversation, because in every state, Karl Rove has minions who go about the business of acquiring clients on the local and state level, and that money trickles right up to Karl Rove as well. Now, do those consultants make some money? Absolutely. But does that money trickle up to Karl Rove? Absolutely. Your call is 866-915-4809. Should we start a third party? Should we at least let the GOP sweat it out? Maybe we see how many of us we can get organized to jump ship in the ways that we can, and we threaten it, and we let the GOP win us back when they give us a seat at the table. Maybe that's what we do. And I know there are those of you saying, oh, no, Gina, don't go third party. And I'm here to tell you I haven't. But I don't mind the discussion. And I will give time on this show to that discussion. Because I'm not going to be one of those people that lets the GOP establishment continue to take us for granted and lie to us and think that it's okay to treat us with complete disregard and arrogance all the time. Going to go to Ryan on line 3. Should the GOP start, should conservatives leave the GOP and start a new party? And if so, Ryan, what do you think it should be called? Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show.
Hey, Dr. Gina.
Hey.
I think that I love third parties. You know, I didn't vote for Mitt Romney because I didn't like Paul Ryan, so I voted for the Constitution Party the last election. And I live in New York, so it didn't make a difference. And I think that third parties do work sometimes. I mean, there are occasions that having a horrible Republican or a really good third-party protest vote doesn't make, I think, is an important decision. I don't know if Sarah Palin, unless she's planning on running again, she'll leave the Republican Party, though.
Do you think that, first of all, that's a good question that I want to get to, is who do you think should head up that ticket? Do you think that she might be posturing right now just to say to the establishment GOP, hey, if you don't quit all your baloney, we have the right and the ability to go form a third party. And hey, by the way, whether you like her or not, she has a lot of support out there, a ton of grassroots, an organization that's been in place since before Mitt Romney, well before Mitt Romney was the nominee in the last election, that she could bring with her. Do you think that she might be posturing on this to send a strong message to the GOP that they might not hold on to their crown forever?
Well, you know, if you remember back in 1992, we had George H.W. Bush as the president, and we had Bill Clinton running as a Democrat, and a lot of middle-class, working-class Americans felt like Bush was not responding to them, and that's why they ran to Ross Perot. And they had their Reform Party, but it fell apart. But when that happened, though, the amount of middle-class, working-class people, especially working-class white people, who came out to vote increased because they felt like, wow, there's somebody who's actually speaking to my agenda. I don't know who would be best to behold that crown, but if somebody who came out, too many people think that both parties are exactly alike. If someone were to come out and have a position that's more, you know, middle ground, or not middle ground as part of being a moderate, but on ideas that no one has been talking about for a long time, I think that they definitely should run. I think that anyone who has got a different idea to uphold and to run the country should running.
Okay, and dream ticket for you, Ryan, who would that be?
For president, and Republican or third party?
Third party.
That's hard to say. I want Chris Christie to run no matter what. I don't care what party he runs under. But as far as the third party goes, that's really, really hard. I don't know anybody yet, and that's disappointing that I don't have someone in mind. But if I do, I'll definitely I'll tweet you.
All right. Thank you
All right.
so much for your phone call. And we are going to come back in a moment. This is what we're going to do. We're going to shift gears a little bit. And I told you this, but this is a new fun part of the Dr. Gina Show format that we have not done before. That is, I get letters from you every day telling me how frustrated you are, your cultural dilemmas, your struggle not to snap, frankly, as Rush Limbaugh put it, just living in the world of conservatism every single day and facing all the bad news every day, and your dilemmas about your message, about how to continue to be an activist in the midst of all this, and even sometimes just to deal with the balance of personal, professional, financial, so on and so forth. So we're going to go to those sorts of calls right after this, 866-915-4809. If you're finding it hard to be a conservative and you're not sure how to answer the questions out there on the street that you are asked on a regular basis, you can call me and I'll try to help. 866-915-4809. We'll do that when we come back. Stay tuned.
Ranger Station.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting in the forest.
1
second, I'm having a smoke. Next thing I know, I'm face-to-face with Smokey Bear.
Wow.
And he told me it only takes one spark to start a wildfire.
Did you know 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans?
I had no idea.
That's why Smokey's famous and you're not. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
God, guns, and gear, the things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
Hey, I heard you are a wild one. Ooh. Hey, I heard you are a wild one. Show me how you do. I want to shut down in the club with you. Hey, I heard you are a wild one. Ooh.
And you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show. Many of you have written me, and I appreciate it. I love it, actually, with your struggles, your personal struggles. And I want to invite you. This is the new portion of the show. I told you we were doing some fun reformats based on what you have asked for. And one of those is that we are going to include your option to call in with your personal struggles regarding the things that you deal with every day. It is hard out there, and it is hard to remain a conservative in the face of so much coming down on us. I know last week, the SCOTUS decisions, they sent some a packing. I'm not going to lie. There are people I know who said, I am done with politics. I can't take it anymore. Dr. Gina, I'm done. And I've watched as like numbers on, on Facebook, I'll see people just go away and they're not involved in politics anymore. And even when I look at their Facebook page, they're posting goofy comic strip stuff. They're not talking politics anymore. They can't take it anymore. And then you couple with that the horrible dilemma that this government has put us in, where everyone's spying on us, and if you do go for help to a counselor, God only knows that might end up on the front page of your local paper, right? You might not be able to ever get a gun again to defend yourself against the tyranny you're so concerned about. So I've received your letters, and I've heard you, and we've opened up the show now to where we are going to let you call in with those sorts of dilemmas. What is the message you're taking to the streets? What are the struggles you're having as a conservative? How can we help be a tool to you to get through those? And my background in psychology hopefully will help a little bit more than that. My life of dealing with the GOP establishment and the trickery of the progs out there, I think will be my best asset. And there will be things I don't know the answers to. But if I know you, the answers are probably already within you. That's what I know about conservatives. See, because the truth is self-evident. And I know that. So you can call into the show, 866-915-4809. It's the same number for political topics as it is for these personal moral dilemmas, whether you're facing them in your family, at your dinner table over the Independence Day, whether you're facing them in your workplace, in your group of friends, in your homeschool group, in your public school parents group, in your school, wherever it is that you are facing them on your own Facebook wall. I know that's a big dilemma for some people. We'll take your calls now. 866-915-4809. And we're going to go first to Nicole. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Now tell me your dilemma. You face this dilemma where? What's the setting?
My work area.
Okay. And what kind of work are you in? You don't need to tell us specifically, but just generally speaking, what kind of work?
I'm a graphic designer, so I work with a lot of artists.
Okay. All right. And go ahead with your question, Nicole.
Sure. I heard you talking about feminism earlier and how it's destroying families. And as you know, I work with a lot of artists and some of them are young women. And they seem to hate the thought of motherhood because I'm a mother and I bring up my child a lot, and they just kind of roll their eyes and walk away kind of thing. So I even brought my little boy in one day, and I could tell, some of them were annoyed. So I feel like I should do my part and try to talk to them. But, is that really part of the feminist movement, or is that just normal part of being a young woman?
Yeah, and I don't know. Let me ask you a couple questions first. The people in your office who have been this way to your son, which first of all, I can't imagine treating a child that way. But secondly, are these people who are generally friendly to you on other topics, and it's just when you are talking about being a mom or having a child that they're hostile?
I think overall they're generally friendly and stuff like that, but they are just freshly out of college. This is their first big corporate job. They're trying to make an impression and work up their way to a corporate ladder, and a lot of them just say, I can't see myself having children, or, oh my gosh, because he is a high-energy kid. And I could just tell they get annoyed because he likes to run and have fun. And so overall, I think...
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think a couple of things. I think you're absolutely right. This is a culture of feminism. I think the left has done a great job of creating a culture of death where we really don't have patience for people that we see as expendable in our culture. That would be the very old and the very young. There's very little respect on both ends of the spectrum for life at the beginning stages or life at its end stages, and I think that we see that reflected in our news every day. I'm not sure what messages are out there helping young people today, especially those just graduating from college, to appreciate frankly, marriage or children or anything that has to do with traditional values. So I imagine that it does have to do with the media they are selecting. You don't ever see, on television these days, especially on the shows that most of these young people are watching, you don't see the idea of parenthood being glorified. You see crazy kids climbing everywhere, and I can't stand undisciplined children myself. I have a big peeve for that, but I have 5 children. My children didn't have any option but to be pretty well behaved and pretty disciplined, especially in public, and let them cut loose in other places. So I would say this, if you're trying to talk to them about what you find being rewarding about being a parent and being a mom. I would just be real sincere about that, and I would take it to them with the empathy, you know, that it is hard to balance. I mean, it is very hard. As a mother of 5 children, I can tell you it's very hard. I didn't get into the studio as early as I would have liked today because I was dropping my daughter off at Fox News to do a hit. It is what we face as parents. There are struggles, but you know, I always tell my children that there's nothing in life worth doing that is easy, and it's so true. Anything in life worth doing is difficult. It is a fact. It's by God's design, because if you understand Scripture, this is not our home. This is not supposed to be the comfy, cushy place where we just all go to the spas and get our nails done every day. And if that's what these young girls are expecting, they're going to have a rude awakening. My guess, Nicole, is that they are probably in that phase where they're thinking they have to continue to rationalize what they're doing with their life. And to do that, they have to be hostile to the choices they're not making. Are you familiar with the term cognitive dissonance?
I've heard of it, but not no, not really.
Okay.
I've heard of it before, though.
Well, in layman's terms, and really simply, cognitive dissonance means when you get a new piece of information, what we do as human beings is we file it in a place where it continues to not disrupt our thought patterns. So if you have a young girl fresh out of college and everyone's telling her, well, if you have kids, it's going to screw up your whole life, right? She's going to do all the things she can to convince herself that that fact is true because she's made this decision to be in this career. So she's not wanting anything to mess with that. So if you were to bring your child into the workplace and you had your cute little boy there and this young freshly graduated college girl who's trying really hard to believe that she, first of all, isn't going to think about the later days of her life where she's going to probably wish she'd had children and wish she'd done things differently. She's probably going to find a lot is lacking about a career that doesn't love you back very much, like a child certainly does, at least later in life. She's going to probably not find a career nearly as fulfilling. She's probably watching your life and saying, ooh, this girl's causing me to ask questions about my own lifestyle and my own choices in my life. If she lets that in, Nicole, she's going to have to re-examine everything she believes. And your son, whether you mean for him, and whether she even means for him to be that or not, is emblematic of that dilemma that she is already probably wrestling with. Because you can't help it. You will occasionally see a really cute kid on a subway or a really cute kid in a TV commercial. It's going to be hard for her to avoid the fact, and let's face this too, we all played with baby dolls. Did you play with baby dolls when you were little?
Oh, yeah, Barbies, yeah, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and we all dream, just like we dream about a wedding, most young girls dream about having a baby and being a mother someday. And she is believing the lies she's been told from the left and choosing instead this life that is going to be pretty vacant for her, in my opinion. So when you have these girls at work who are saying that, I think the best thing you can do is come alongside them, and without really challenging them and saying, you know, just because you've made these decisions, you don't need to direct your hostility at my son. Not that that's what you would do, but I think coming alongside with them and just saying to them, you know, there are struggles and it is difficult sometimes, but man, the good times are so good and so worth it. And pulling them into your life rather than pushing them away, rather than ever making them feel judged for the decisions they've made. I think the number one problem we have to face as conservatives is not letting people for a moment feel judged by us. And if you can do that, if you can invite her into your private world, maybe a couple of these young girls that you like, you can start to help them with their careers, and they can learn to trust you that way. And then an occasional lunch here and there, and just talking to them, not forcing the issue, but just inviting them into your world and letting them see. I love the scripture, and scripture is always such a great, reliable tool for any of this. The scripture that says, always be prepared to give a reason for your joy. Always be prepared if they ask you to give a reason. What sets you apart? How come you can still come to work and have it all together on most days when they're disheveled and all they had to do was drag themselves into work that day? When you can give a reason for your joy, Nicole, I think you're gonna get them with that. So good luck with that. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for calling into the show with your dilemma. When we come back, we are going to talk about this. You've been told some lies about the SCOTUS decisions last week, the Supreme Court decisions last week. But world-renowned attorney Charles Lemandry is going to be here on the show to tell you how you've been lied to. And it might not be as bad as you think, conservatives. Dr. Gina Show bringing you even more good news. because we like to do that. So stay tuned for what you don't know about the Supreme Court decisions from last week, right after this.
Just a few years ago, Gina Loudon was a young, impressionable college student on her way to becoming the pride of her progressive college professors. Late one night, away from the supervision of the college faculty, in a freak accident, she was exposed to an overdose of common-sense conservatism. Since then, she has spent every waking moment unlearning everything she was programmed to believe during her college indoctrination. Join her in her re-education. This is the Dr. Gina Show.
You're coming into my house?
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Go get a real job.
Three-letter word. Jobs. J-O-B-S.
The president and the first lady are kind of like the mom and the dad of the country. And when your dad says something, you listen.
They don't get a pass because they're young and stupid.
16 ounces is the maximum that they would be able to serve in one cup. If you want to order 2 cups at the same time, that's fine. It's your choice.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Where do they come up with this stuff?
This is the Dr. Gina Show.
Thanks for listening. This is the Dr. Gina Show. We're glad to be with you today. Glad to celebrate with you. I love these times of year where we can just step back and reflect on what really is exceptional about this country and how cool is it that there are folks out there like my next guest who continually, this is what he does every single day. And if you haven't checked out his American Minute, Bill Federer is his name. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's high time you do. I only have 2 subscriptions, 2 RSS feeds that I subscribe to. One is Bill Federer, and one is Compass International, their little daily Bible studies. And there's a reason for that, because every day, if I'm not grounded in how we got to be the greatest country on the face of the earth, how it is that we are so exceptional, if I don't remind myself of that by reading Bill Federer's work every day, then I can't possibly get on air and continue to defend it to you against the savage voices on the other side. So it is without any further ado that I introduce to you once again one of your favorite guests and the official historian of the Dr. Gina Show, that is Bill Federer. Bill, welcome back to the show.
Dr. Gina, great to be with you.
Great to have you. Now, it is that time of year to celebrate the anniversary of our nation's foundings, and of course we're all going to have fireworks and barbecues and parties, but back in 1776, were they celebrating?
No, and a little background. Everyone says, well, America is the greatest country in the world. I decided to prove it, and so I spent about a year researching every civilization that has ever existed on planet Earth. And the first records, the first human beings writing down human records, appear about 3,000 or 4,000 BC. Egyptian hieroglyphics, Sumerian cuneiform, and lo and behold, 4,000 BC, 2,080, 6,000 years. That's not that long. That's just 60 people living 100 years each, back to back. Anyway, the most common form of government in all of these 6,000 years is dictators. They go by different names: Pharaoh, Caesars, Kaisers, Sultans, Tsars, Maharajas, Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, Attila the Hun. And if you're friends with the dictator, you're more equal. If you're not friends with the dictator, you're less equal. And if you're an enemy of the dictator, you're dead. It's called treason. And over the centuries, the empires kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So you had the Elamites and the Persians and the Egyptians and the Greeks, and then the Romans and the Byzantines and the Ottomans and the Vikings and the Charlemagne, and finally you worked your way up. The largest empire that the planet had seen was the British Empire. And the King of England basically oversaw 13 million square miles and 500 million people. I mean, all of India, which was a quarter of the world's population right there, and they had Hong Kong and New Zealand, Australia, and the British West Indies, and all the North America, and but America breaks away, and so founders experienced what it was like being under a king.
Okay, hang on just one second. I just want to say this because I really want listeners to understand, when we call America exceptional, this is precisely the reason it truly is like no other country in history. That's what you're spelling out for us here.
Right. I mean, over history, there were the kings, and then they tried to find ways to limit the king. The first was using his own words. Remember, like Darius and Cyrus, and they said, well, king, you said that you weren't supposed to see Vashti again, so you got to go out and get some more, and you got Esther, and you said that you had to throw Daniel in the lion's den. You can't. So he was limited by his own words. Second, you're limited by the words of past kings, and so this is sort of like, the court traditions. Third, you're limited by a religion or religious leaders. Fourth, you're limited by the noblemen, the rich noblemen. They try to put a little pressure on you. The next is a constitution, but it's different than ours because the constitution sort of limits the king. The ultimate is us, where there is no king and you're just ruled by the constitution. And so America, we took the power of a king and we went in the total opposite direction. And we wanted to separate it amongst the people. Unfortunately, after every crisis, the rubber band wants to snap back into the power into the hands of a king. But so when America broke away, if it wasn't for a 3,000-mile ocean, if it wasn't for competition of France, the second biggest empire in the world, against the British, and if it wasn't for us having 2 centuries of practicing self-government, we never would have had this great experiment where we produced the freest, most prosperous nation with the most individual liberty and freedom of any nation in 6,000 years of civilization on planet Earth. And it's slipping through our fingers like sand. But nevertheless, our founders knew what they were doing. And one of the things they did was there was a French and Indian War, and so it was the first global war in the 1750s to 1760s, and in America we call it the French and Indian War. In Europe it's called the 7 Years' War, but those 2 superpowers had it out all around the world, but in America the French lost, and the British king decided he wanted to leave troops on American soil and make us pay for them, and these troops they didn't have barracks, so the troops would stay in your house. They'd go up to your house and say, okay, guess what? We're living here, we're eating your food, sleeping in your beds, and you got to sleep in the barn. And this went on more and more. It's called quartering. Mm-hmm. And a crowd gathered in Boston and said, we don't like this, and the British fired into the crowd and killed a bunch, and it's called the Boston Massacre. And then the British decided they're going to tax us to pay for these people occupying us, and they had the sugar tax, tea tax, stamp tax, the intolerable taxes. The king would give monopolies to his favorites, but the Americans would have to pay all the taxes, and a crowd gathered in Boston and threw 342 chests of British East India tea into the Boston harbor, and it's called the Tea Party. And John Hancock had a ship called the Liberty ship, and the British confiscated it because they said there's stuff on there that didn't have the taxes paid on it. And so the people in Boston had this Tea Party. The king didn't like the Tea Party, and he decided to punish.
Oh, that sounds so familiar, Bill. Sorry, I just had to get that in there.
And the king decided to punish the colonies for the Tea Party, and had the blockade of the harbor. June 1st, 1774. I was going to starve them to submission. And the next colony over, Thomas Jefferson is in the Virginia legislature. He decides to draft a day of fasting and prayer. And they introduce it, and it passes. And on the same day the harbor's blockaded, the Virginia legislature's fasting. George Washington writes in his diary, he went to church, fasted all day. Well, the royal governor of Virginia, appointed by the king, interprets this day of fasting as a veiled protest against the king because it's the king's policies that's blockading the harbor. Mm-hmm. So this royal governor, Lord Dunmore, decides to disband the Virginia legislature, fires them, tells them to go home. Mm-hmm. Well, they don't go home. They go down the street to the Raleigh Tavern, named after Sir Walter Raleigh, who founded Virginia way back when. They go to Raleigh Tavern, and in the back room, they plot to have a Continental Congress, which meets in September of that same year, and 2 years later votes for independence.
And ironically, if you're there, you can still walk those same streets in that same walk, which I think is one of the most fun thing to do with your children for historic, to make it really sink for them.
Oh, it's really special that when Jefferson was the governor, he moved the capital to Richmond, and so the city all of a sudden was vacated. And it's sort of nice because when the Rockefellers came through in the 1930s, they decided to rebuild everything, and it's almost exactly the way it was way back when the founders were meeting there. Mm-hmm. But I put together a book with my wife, and it's called Miracles in American History, and it's stories of the revolution and going through a lot of what we're talking about today. If you'd like, I can sort of walk us through.
I would love that, and I want to point out that you have one of the most amazing, intelligent, beautiful on the inside and out wives of all political patriots in the entire world, and that is Sue Federer. Tell us about your book. It's called Miracles in History.
Well, you're so kind. Miracles in American History. And here's a quote from Thomas Jefferson's Day of Fasting and Prayer. This House, being deeply impressed with the apprehension of danger to be derived of British America from the hostile invasion of the city of Boston and our sister colony of Massachusetts, deem it highly necessary that the said first day of June be set apart by the members of this House as a day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer. And so they meet in September of 1774 in Philadelphia, and they have their first Continental Congress. Now, the colonies were founded by different denominations. A little background for those that may not be familiar. Western Europe was all Catholic until Martin Luther starts the Reformation in 1517. In 1529, 100,000 Muslims surround Vienna, Austria, under Suleiman the Magnificent. And they control the Mediterranean, and they're raiding into Hungary and Poland and Wallachia and all over. And Martin Luther says the Turk is the rod of the wrath of the Lord our God, and because of our sins, God gives us into the hands of the devil and the Turk. And but the most powerful man in the world is the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V of Spain, and he's Catholic. He controls all of the Americas and the Philippines, and the sun never set on the Spanish Empire. And from his point of view, there's a double dilemma: Muslim invasion on one side and Reformation on the other side. So he figured the Muslim invasion was worse, and so he strikes a deal with the Protestant Lutheran princes and says, look, believe what you want in your country, let's just work together against these Muslims. And that's called the Peace of Augsburg in 1555. Well, this started a domino effect across Europe, where each country chose its own denomination. Whatever the king believed, the kingdom believed. And so in England was Anglican, Scotland was Presbyterian, Holland was Dutch Reformed, Sweden and northern Germany were Lutheran, Switzerland Calvinist, Italy, Spain, France, Austria, Poland remained Roman Catholic. But if you didn't believe the way your king did, you were persecuted and you fled. Mm-hmm. These are the ones that spilled over and founded colonies. And so Virginia was an Anglican colony. Massachusetts was a Puritan colony. Rhode Island was a Baptist colony. New York was a Dutch Reformed colony. Delaware and New Jersey were originally Swedish Lutheran colonies. Maryland was a Catholic colony. Connecticut, New Hampshire, Congregationalist colonies. Pennsylvania, Quaker colony. You get the picture. It was one denomination per colony, which is like Europe, one denomination per country. Mm-hmm. And, the revolution starts in September 1774. Representatives from these colonies come to the Continental Congress. And a motion was made for prayer, and some of the Quakers didn't want to hear a prayer from Episcopalians, who didn't want to hear a prayer from Anabaptists, who didn't want to hear a prayer from Presbyterians. Sam Adams stands up, and he says, I'm no bigot, and I can hear a prayer of any man of piety who at the same time is a patriot of his country. And so they get the Reverend Jacob Duché from across the street at Christ Church, Anglican Church. He comes across, and he leads them in prayer. And John Adams says that the prayer stirred the bosom of every man present, and he breaks out into an extemporary prayer. And I never heard such a prayer. You know, Washington was kneeling in prayer, and and brought tears to their eyes. And anyway, so the Continental Congress is now officially started with prayer. 6 months later, the British decide they want to go after the Tea Party leaders, and so Sam Adams and John Hancock are in Lexington and Lexington and Concord, and the British are sending their troops, and of course they put the lanterns in the Old North Church to warn them that the British are coming, and Paul Revere takes off riding and goes through, and they warn them. The British are coming into Lexington and Concord to get their guns and to arrest the Tea Party leaders, and the pastors of the church says, don't shoot first, let them shoot. And so the Americans are standing there, and sure enough, the British shoot first, and the Americans fire back. A lot of them are killed, and they chase the Americans to the Concord Bridge, and they rally, and they won't let the British cross, and then the British start retreating, and then it's a rout where people are shooting at them from behind windows and behind trees and off the hillsides, and the British are running back to Boston, and I mean, hundreds are getting killed. And the same day, the Connecticut governor, John Trumbull, declares a day of fasting, April 19th, 1775. that God would graciously pour out his Holy Spirit on us to bring us to a thorough repentance and effectual reformation, that our iniquities may not be our ruin, so on and so forth.
But
and,
we don't have those anymore.
Well, the last day of president was Woodrow Wilson during World War I. But FDR did have days of prayer during World War II and passed out Gideon's New Testaments and Book of Psalms. Eisenhower had days of prayer. He made it an annual event. Nixon had a day of prayer when Apollo 13 was lost in space, so to speak. And but anyway, the June of 1775, the president of the Continental Congress is now John Hancock, and he has a day of fasting. And he says that there's a public humiliation, fasting, and prayer. It is recommended to Christians of all denominations to assemble for public worship and abstain from servile labor on that day. Well, that was June. What happened a few weeks later? Well, June 17th, the Battle of Bunker Hill. So the British decide not just to blockade Boston's harbor, they're going to take the city. But they brought the wrong size cannonballs. And so instead of pounding away on Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill, they have to unload 2,300 British troops and charge them up the hill. The Americans repel them twice, killing 1,000. They finally run out of gunpowder, and the British take the hill. But this shows that Americans could successfully repel British soldiers. And 300 miles away, they have Washington chosen to be the commander-in-chief, for which he takes no pay, and he comes to Boston and takes charge. And lo and behold, when the British take Boston, they trash a lot of stuff, including a bookstore that was run by a 25-year-old guy, Henry Knox. So this 25-year-old Henry Knox decides to join the 43-year-old George Washington, and Henry Knox has an idea. 300 miles away is Fort Ticonderoga, and it has 59 huge cannons, and he offers to go there and get them. Washington says okay, so he takes off. It takes 3 months through ice and snow. He builds these sleds. They drag them across frozen rivers. One of them breaks through the ice, and they got to get the men of Albany to help fish it out. And they finally drag these cannons to Boston on March 4th of 1776. They pack straw around the wagon wheels, and in the silence of nighttime, they put them on Dorchester Heights. Dorchester Heights was a huge hill that the British had sort of overlooked getting control of, but it overlooked the harbor. And on March 5th, the British general, William Howe, looks up and sees the cannons, and he says, these rebels did more in one night than my whole army could have done in a month. And so the British general, William Howe, makes plans to attack Dorchester Heights, and the colony declares a day of prayer, and Washington orders his troops to observe it. He says, Thursday the 7th, 1776 of March, this province set aside a day of fasting, prayer, and humiliation to implore the Lord and giver of victory to pardon our manifold sins, and all soldiers are strictly enjoined to pay reverence on said day to the sacred duties of the Lord of hosts. Well, the next day, March 7th, the same day that they're fasting and praying, British General Howe puts 3,000 men on ships, and they're going to go across the harbor to Dorchester Heights, but a violent storm blows up. And it's so turbulent he can't even land his ship, so he has to abandon the attack. And Washington writes to his brother, upon their discovery of the works the next day, great preparation was made for attacking them, but not being ready before afternoon and the weather getting very tempestuous, much blood was saved and a very important blow prevented. That this most remarkable interposition of Providence is for some wise purpose, I have not a doubt. Well, so that is March of 1776. 8 days later, March 16th, 1776, General William Livingston introduces a resolution in the Continental Congress. It passes unanimously for a day of what? Fasting and prayer. Congress desires to have all people of all ranks and degrees duly impressed with a sense of God's superintending providence, recommend a day of humiliation, fasting, and prayer, and through the merits and mediation of Jesus Christ, obtain pardon and forgiveness. So that's March 16th, 1776. Well, of course, we know that on July 2nd is when the Continental Congress voted finally for independence. July 4th, 1776, they approved the wording of the Declaration of Independence because Jefferson had written it listing the reasons we were rebelling. The king was blockading our harbors. The king was appointing all the judges who were accountable to his will alone. the king was inciting natives on the frontiers to butcher the inhabitants, on our settlements. But he listed that the king had enslaved the people who had never offended him and transported them against their will, and many died in the transportation, and the king stopped every effort of the colonies to end this execrable commerce in humankind. It was slavery. And South Carolina, Georgia said they're not signing it with that in there, so they took it out. And how we wish they would have pressed the issue and kept it in and ended slavery right at the beginning. But nevertheless, they approved the wording on July 4th. July 8th, they read it out loud for the first time in Philadelphia and rang the Liberty Bell.
Yeah, how about that?
July 9th, they rush a copy of it out to George Washington, who is now in New York. And the British decided that the next city after Boston, they're going to try to take New York. The Declaration, by the way, does mention God 4 times. Laws of nature and of nature's God. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Appealing to the supreme judge of the world, and with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. But an interesting story. So here's Washington in New York. His ranks swelled to 20,000. These guys think, hey, we got the British out of Boston without really firing a shot. We can do the same thing here. And the British, meanwhile, assembled the largest invasion force in world history up to that point. 400 ships across the bay in New York. They said it looked like a forest of trees because of all the sails and their masts.
Yeah,
there's 32,000 troops, and there's a loyalist. Now, a loyalist is someone who's loyal to Britain. So here's somebody in America that is not loyal to America. I know that's hard for us to imagine that somebody like that could exist.
Every street corner.
And anyway, so this loyalist leads the British to land upstream and leads them through Jamaica Pass through pitch black darkness, and they attack Washington from behind on the morning of August 27th, 1776. They charge. Washington doesn't expect it. 3,000 Americans are killed or wounded, only 300 British. And Washington watches his brave Maryland regiment. They charge 6 times to their death. And Washington says, good God, what brave fellows I have lost this day. They buy time so the Washington could turn every around. But the sun in Washington is now pinned up against the water with all these ships behind him.
Oh.
And the sun goes down. And the war's over the next day, right? I mean, this is the entire American army. There's no one else to come to their rescue. And we would just be another British colony like Kenya or India or Hong Kong. And anyway, Washington has a bright idea that he is going to ferry all of his troops across the East River to Manhattan Island. Now, it's unseasonably calm on the East River, but it's turbulent out in the bay where those 400 ships are. And so all night long, he's moving troops and horses and cannons, and then the sun begins to come up. The sky's starting to turn pink and orange, and they go, uh-oh, half our troops are still in line waiting to be moved across. Now we're really sitting ducks. And then his chief of intelligence, Major Ben Talmadge, writes, as the dawn of the next day approached, those of us who remained in the trenches became very anxious for our own safety. And at this time, a very dense fog began to rise off the river and seemed to settle in a peculiar manner over both encampments. I recollect this providential occurrence perfectly well, and so very dense was the atmosphere that I could scarcely discern a man at 6 yards distance. Well, the fog stayed till about noon, and Washington was on the last boat that left, and then the British charge up the hill, and no one's there. This was the last chance they had to capture the entire American army at once, and Washington writes, the hand of Providence has been so conspicuous in the course of the war that he must be worse than an infidel that lacks faith.
Wow.
Anyway.
Those words, I mean, just to hear those kinds of words and to realize, how far we've come and how far we've gone, really, from that sort of faith. Tell folks, Bill, where they can get your book.
Well, my website is AmericanMinute.com. And this book is titled Miracles in American History.
Miracles in American History. That is awesome to know. And, of course, people need to subscribe to your American Minute because it is absolutely awesome. Tell your amazing wife and family we said hello. Thank you so much, and happy Independence Day to you, Bill.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gina, and the same to your wonderful husband, John, and your beautiful family.
Thank you so much. All right, coming up next, why big families might make you better, richer, and happier You want to hear that? Also, do sex scandals matter? We want to take your phone calls on that. 866-915-4809. Right after this.
Hi, I'm Ted Cruz, and this is the Freedom Minute. The IRS scandal revealed the targeting of conservative groups, Tea Party groups, pro-life groups, and pro-Israel groups for intrusive questions and harassing. This is the consequence of an agency that is too big and has too much power. And now the IRS is supposed to be put in charge of administering Obamacare. Enough is enough. We need to abolish the IRS. Eliminate the intrusive agents and replace the IRS and the tax code with a simple flat tax where every American can file his or her taxes on a postcard. Every year we spend about $500 billion on tax compliance, which is deadweight loss, and it doesn't produce even a single truck or tortilla. A flat tax would produce economic growth and create jobs. Thanks for listening. This is Ted Cruz with the Freedom Minute.
7,000 high school students drop out every school day. That's one every 26 seconds. So here's a 26-second message of encouragement.
Hey, I'm Matt. I know, sometimes you think no one cares if I finish high school, right? Well, I do. Me and thousands of people you've never even met. Okay, here's the thing. When you graduate, you have better opportunities to make more money, have a cool job, just have a better life. So the next time you need a little support, a little motivation, just know there are a whole lot of shoulders for you to lean on. So stay in school and graduate.
Do you have 26 seconds to convince a student to stay at their desk? Now you can share your message of support at boostup.org. We can keep students in school. Visit boostup.org and take the first step. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com, docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear. You understand your Second Amendment freedoms, but who is out there with a no-compromise attitude that will defend those Second Amendment rights? Well, I can tell you, gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. This is Dr. Gina, and I want you to go to that website right now, gunowners.org, and let them know that you want to help them as they continue the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington, D.C., according to Ron Paul. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Check them out.
This is Fingers Malloy of FTRRadio.com. Listen to the Dr. Gina Show, or the baby seal gets it.
And you are listening to the Dr. Gina Show. I jumped the gun there. It happens sometimes, So, I have so many things I want to get to, and I just can never, ever shut Bill Federer down because I think he's so awesome, and I love his storytelling.
I know. I was hoping you weren't going to shut him down.
I didn't. I let him go, but as a result, I can't get to all my stories I want.
Gosh, I love his stories that he comes up with.
It's amazing, and that's why we should all read his stuff and get his books, because we can't be better prepared than we can if we are very familiar with the work of Bill Federer. So many thanks to him, and of course his great organization, American Minute. Your calls into the show, 866-915-4809, on the topic, do sex scandals matter anymore? I don't know. I don't know. I think we are in such a day and age that some people just simply can't prioritize that mattering more than any other issue. I don't know. I really am at a point where I cannot even, it's like so many things these days, I just can't even answer on that. But one of the things that definitely does matter is size of family. And I have people, as a mom, of course, I have people that come up to me all the time and talk to me about, say, oh my goodness, you have children. There's so many dumb responses to that, producer Jason. I don't know if you've ever been with me when I'm with all 5 children and people come up and make me the you sure have your hands full. That's their favorite. And my friend who has more children than I do gave me the best comeback to that. I always say, yes, full of blessings, because I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to take it. I'm an only child of 2 only children. I hated it. I still hate it, and I will hate it. I hate being an only child. And, you know, both of my parents must not have minded, because they didn't seem to have the same heartfelt mission that I do. But I did not like being an only child. I was not going to have an only child, and I love having a big family. And turns out there are some big advantages to having a big family, and I think folks should know about them. You know, I've noticed already, one thing somebody pointed out to me, because as a homeschool mom, I get the question all the time, how do you socialize your children? Well, in the homeschool world, we call that the S word, and socialization. And we don't have a lot of patience for it, let's just say, because we get it all the time. The other one we get all the time with families that are big is, don't you know what caused that? That's original. But anyway, and so somebody said to me once, you know, do you think it's harder? There are a lot of answers to the S question, as we call it, but someone said and gave me what I think is the best answer to that, and that is this. Do you think it's harder for folks to get along, little kids to get along with kids where they are rotating classes and they see them for 30 minutes and they can't talk, then they're in the hallway, and then another class, new crop of students, and they can't talk, and then they go in the hallway again, and then they go to recess, they go to gym, they go to the next class, a different crop of kids, so on and so forth. Do you think that's harder, or do you think it's harder to get along with the same 3, 4, 5, 7, 12 siblings all day, every day, all night, in your business, all your days of all your life? Which is the more sophisticated socialization? It's an easy answer. Jason, you're one of a few, so you grew up with siblings. Do you think there are advantages in that for you?
Of course, yeah. You know, you have to learn to get along with the same person all the time. When you just see someone, you know, at school every day, you get to leave them.
Mm-hmm.
You get to leave them there. You know, yeah, you dread seeing them. Yeah, maybe you can avoid them for that period of time. You can't avoid your family. You can't avoid your brothers and sisters. You're going to see them. Can't get away from them.
Yeah. So they say there are actually huge advantages in that. One, children from larger families get into fewer fights and are better at making and keeping friends. And that's something in your life. You know, if you're an only child, you never even have to exercise those things. So that's something. Through having siblings, children learn empathy, team playing, gratification, deferment. We wonder why we've got this immediate gratification going on. Time management and how to resolve disputes. Children with more siblings have lower rates of asthma, eczema, and hay fever. Now, we don't really know why, but I can tell you this. The studies say that even if a child is put into a preschool or something, they don't get these same benefits. So it's not about just being with any old random children. There's something, by the way, in God's design about the natural order of things. Children with more siblings make fewer visits to the doctor and have a reduced risk of leukemia, cancer, and diabetes, just from being in a big family. Older siblings present younger ones from being bullied, so they endure less bullying in their lifetimes. In larger families, play is less closely supervised, and children learn to take risks, which make them better employees and better employers. This according to the Telegraph. Children in large families learn to cook, use the washing machine, and oh, don't I know it, because my kids each have their own chores. Larger families, there's more emphasis on thrift. Children come out better able to make a budget than those in smaller families or only children. And those who grow up with siblings are better at getting along with the opposite sex, and oh, by the way, have fewer divorces. You can't beat that. There's just not much that's not better about being in a bigger family. So I'm very, very excited about that. And I find it so ironic that on the same day as this study came out and started making all the media hits, it is the same day that Chelsea Schilling from WorldNet Daily wrote the story about how the feminist in Texas wants women to stop having sex as their husbands for punishment for not being pro-choice. The contrast there is really a beautiful thing. So you have this beautiful picture of marriage and family, and then we have this massive ignoring of sex scandals, and we've seen it continue to grow and flourish. We've seen sex scandals matter less and less, and in fact in Psychology Today there's an article that says that 2 years ago, as you know, Anthony Weiner tweeted a picture of his private parts to his followers. Did it while his wife was pregnant with their first child, admitted to having inappropriate online relationships with several women, and after all of this, he disappeared for a while, but now he's back.
He's back.
And despite his transgressions hopefully, Anthony Weiner is running, of course, for mayor of New York, thus trying to join the long list of politicians who have managed to come back after a sex scandal. This is not limited to Democrats. We, of course, have Newt Gingrich. Many others have had sex scandals. Classic, of course, is Bill Clinton. Would Bill Clinton even have ever been looked at in a quote unquote sexy light if it weren't for Monica in the blue dress? I don't think so. He's married to Hillary. She ain't all that.
Are you trying to say that you think it helped Bill Clinton, the sex scandal?
I absolutely do. And the
Wow.
list goes on. There's David Vitter, remember, Republican senator from Louisiana, reelected in 2010 despite having been involved in a prostitution scandal. That's on the Republican side. So this is not a partisan issue. Recently, of course, you remember Mark Sanford defeated Elizabeth Colbert Bush in the South Carolina special election. Even Jerry Springer, going back a few, frequented a brothel while serving in the Cincinnati City Council in the 70s, was later elected mayor. Don't we care about decency anymore in the United States? And if we do care, how come these guys seem to get who would have ever even heard of any of these people if it weren't for their sex scandal? And she's not in politics, but Kim Kardashian, her career was launched with a sex tape. So you look
that's when I became a fan.
Oh, gosh.
I'm kidding.
You better be. Your mama's probably listening. Anyway, so when you look at this, could it be the psychological effect? This is my question for you, and I want your calls on this. We've already got them lining up there on the phones, and that's great. 866-915-4809. Could it be that we like a politician not to be too perfect? Jason, you and I, when Mitt Romney was running, he's had the picture-perfect family, the picture-perfect marriage, the picture-perfect financial life, business life, you name it. How many times did you hear somebody say, he's too perfect? I heard that all the time.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah. So maybe we like to know that our politicians are real people. Could that be part of it?
I think that's okay. I want a regular Joe just from down the street.
But does he have to have a sex scandal to make you feel like you can relate to him?
I don't know if you have to go that far, but yeah, it is nice to know somebody you can relate to someone, that they're not, that they're not better than you, really. You don't want to look at someone and think they're better than you. You're not going to vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
You want somebody just like you, regular Joe.
Americans, our psychology is that we like to think we want someone moral, but actually we're completely fascinated with these sex scandals and spend a lot more time talking about that than we do talking about those who are this follow, as men often do, as much as I hate to say it, the trends of politics in Europe. You remember the funeral of Francois Mitterrand, whose funeral was attended by his wife, remember? His mistress standing next to each other. Remember that? And incidentally, also his illegitimate daughter showed up, and they were all one big happy family.
That's got to be uncomfortable.
But most Americans didn't even know his name before that. That is the point. There is something in our psychology that not only is intrigued by this, but tends to be very, very forgiving about this. And then there's the question of female politicians. Can't name one. Doesn't happen often. Why is that? What's the psychology there? Well, we're going to get to that and your phone calls coming up right after this. You call into the show right now. Do you think it matters if there are sex scandals in politics? Do they matter to the American electorate? And is there a different standard for men and women? 866-915-4809 is the number. 866-915-4809. Hold on those lines. We're going to get to you right after this.
Confessions of a Potentially Perfect Parent, brought to you by AdoptUsKids.org.
I know more about cooking dinner for a party of 12 than about packing a lunch for a 12-year-old. I know kids like things like fish sticks. Fillets, I get, but sticks? Maybe we can just compromise on mac and cheese. Can you make that with Brie?
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. Call 1-888-200-4005 or visit AdoptUsKids.org for more information. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
God, guns, and gear. The things you need to be a proper conservative these days. Go to the Dr. Gina site at docgtv.com. That's docgtv.com for all of your Patriot gear, including concealed carry handbags, the best T-shirts you'll find anywhere, and even jewelry for that special woman in your life who enjoys her freedoms as well. docgtv.com. docgtv.com. Go there for your Patriot gear.
Would you rather be a gun owner or a victim? Hi, I'm Tim Macy from Gun Owners of America. Our Constitution affirms our right to self-defense, including the right to own firearms. Right now in Washington, D.C. and many states around the country, there are radical leftists who'd like to disarm Americans. That's why Gun Owners of America was formed over 35 years ago. We're here for only two reasons: to lobby to protect the Second Amendment and to replace anti-gun politicians with pro-gun Americans who actually understand what the Constitution says. I urge you to join us in this fight. We've been called the only no-compromise pro-gun lobby in Washington, D.C. Please go to gunowners.org and join today. It may help you from becoming a victim tomorrow. That's gunowners.org.
Hey, it's Dr. Gina here, and I told you that I'm going to help you be the most effective in your activism that I possibly can, and I've got a tip for you right now. Go to gunowners.org and join to be a member. Sign up for their alerts, and you can know exactly what you need to do to take action to save your freedoms. Go there right now and become a member. Gunowners.org. That's gunowners.org. Tell them Dr. Gina sent you. Gunowners.org.
Hi, this is Mark Stein, author of After America, and even in the midst of total societal collapse, you don't want to miss the Dr. Gina Show. She's great.
You know, sometimes the producer just misbehaves, and there's just not a lot you can do about it as a show host. We're talking about sex scandals, taking your calls, 866-915-4809. Do you care anymore, or are there just more important issues on the table for you? You look at the track record of Americans voting for men who've been involved in sex scandals: Bill Clinton, Anthony Weiner, even Newt Gingrich, who's by and large been completely forgiven. I mean, I see Newt Gingrich at the most conservative of the conservative events that I go to. And by the way, I like Newt. I've forgiven him. Why does that not matter to us like it used to? And also, is there a different standard for women with sex scandals in politics? We're going to go to your calls now, 866-915-4809, 866-915-4809. Put it in your phone if you haven't already, and we're going to go to Bill calling from Wisconsin. Bill, does it matter to you if a candidate that you like otherwise on the issues has been involved in a sex scandal, and why or why not?
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Gina.
Hello.
Hello. You know, as far as it goes with me, it does matter to me. I don't weigh it heavily because typically these aren't the people that I'm voting for anyway. Well, there are some conservatives that are going to be in these scandals, but recently, I have thought about this before, and I think you touched on this a little bit earlier. I actually think that these sex scandals ingratiate the candidate to the voters, believe it or not. It's because, you know, just look at the divorce rate and look at the humanity of people. I think a lot of people have either cheated or been cheated on, and, you know, I think it just makes them feel like this person is a little bit more like them, or they're just not, you know, I think it's a real deep psychology behind all this on why. You might want to write a book on that.
Well, let me ask you this, Bill. Let's say, what about women? Is there a different standard for women? And the fact of the matter is, I can't, and Jason can't name a woman who's been a politician elected and been involved in a sex scandal. Can't name one. But let's put your favorite female candidate, who I might know who that is. Let's put that person up there and say, if there was a sex scandal with the issues facing us today, would it matter more to you that this person was involved in a sex scandal, or would it matter more to you that they were right on the issues and had a long track record of being right on your issues prior to that?
The latter.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. You said too, you forgive. Sex it's a tough topic to even talk about, let alone start to get into the psychology behind it.
Oops, we lost him. I don't know what happened. He must have been on a cell phone. Sorry about that, Bill. Your call is 866-915-4809, 866-915-4809. Now, it is interesting because these are the statistics, if you want them. If a married man really wants to be a politician, according to Psychology Today, but he knows he might find it problematic to stay faithful to his wife, he might be better off trying to make it in another country. While it's possible to recover in America, easier to do so in Europe, where of course they are more, I guess you'd say, sexually liberated in a lot of ways than we are here in America. The distinction between the public versus private matters, especially pronounced in continental Europe, which has been very much more accepting of infidelity in the public sphere than in America. And I do think there's a different standard with female politicians. And it's so interesting, Jason, that you brought that up about female teachers and sexual molestation or relationships with their students, when we tend to think that's just horrifying. And if a man does it, it's a completely different story. I'm interested to see what happens to the female politician who goes and does that. I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you, if it was someone with a long track record, I'm not sure it would matter.
Yeah, maybe she'd pick up the support of more men by thinking, kids have these little fantasies about their teachers, It's like, well, and then they hear about it actually happening, and they're like, man, that's kind of cool. This is what guys think, and they don't tell women, by the way. I'm totally
okay. Well, young girls might think that a teacher of theirs, an older male teacher of theirs, is cool. We had a very, very fine-looking priest I've talked about on my show before. What? My husband knows he's a very fine-looking priest, and he was so cute. We used to all just even tease him about how gorgeous he is. And still looks great today, by the way. I saw him not that long ago. And so but it's not a fantasy for me per se. It's just acknowledgement that there's a nice-looking guy. Can't guys have a nice-looking teacher and not have to? Oh, your shifty eyes are scaring me. I'm not even going to talk to you about that. Okay. Well, the unignorable fact is that the majority of sex scandals in American politics revolve around men. No big surprise. And by and large, voters are men as well, which is interesting, which makes you wonder if it is what Bill alluded to, that there are more men who know their own weaknesses in the arena of sex, whether it's pornography or extramarital stuff or whatever. You look at the number of just pastors and priests involved in looking at pornography, those numbers are astounding. So maybe people are saying, maybe men especially are able to say, look, I have my own issues, I better not be the judge of Bill Clinton or Anthony Weiner or whoever it is. One of the most obvious reasons for the difference among female politicians who would get involved in a sex scandal and male politicians is that 19% of women who currently occupy congressional seats, of course, had to work pretty darn hard to get there. They're in a male-dominated industry. I can so relate to that. And they're not going to risk it based on something as fleeting as an affair. Do you think women might just be more conscientious in these matters, more careful not to do them because they have too much at risk, or even maybe more careful in their cover-up? Do you think that could be part of it, Jason? I don't know.
Oh, wait, so you're saying that the reason why there are no women politicians who've been caught because they're better at keeping it quiet?
Maybe. Let's start with the fact that there are much less, only 19% of Congress are women, so there are many fewer politicians that are female for this to happen to start with. But then secondly, I think also one thing that the Psychology Today article didn't point out is I think we're more tolerant of single women being in politics than single men. I know a guy who's a single man politician, and he just kind of stagnated at a certain point, and I think that happens a lot to single men in politics. For some reason, we're less comfortable with that than single women, and I don't know why that is. So even though most Americans disapprove of this, I find it really fascinating that we tend to be very forgiving. There are a couple of ifs to that, though. Can you guess what those ifs are, Producer Jason?
Man, you like putting me on the spot today, don't you? Let's see.
Well, a couple of the ifs are, one is that if they are completely contrite, if they've said, hey, I'm really sorry, I hate that this happened, they sound sincere, they say how sorry they are, and they wait a little while before they come back. We got Bill back. Yay! Been trying to do that here. Bill, go ahead with your thought, because you had something very insightful to say, I could tell. Go ahead.
Well, we're talking about the sex scandals. Doesn't matter. Do
Right.
I care? Does it affect my vote?
Right.
You know, you talked about particular candidates that I might like, and, you know, I would forgive if it was a candidate that I liked. And actually, even if it's a candidate on the other side, I do forgive these people. But I don't think that it's something that the majority of voters hold against the candidate, whether it's our side or their side, because it makes the candidate seem more human and more real, like us, the little people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
But we do have boundaries. There's John Edwards. Now talk to us about what you think was different about a John Edwards as opposed to a Bill Clinton or an Anthony Weiner. I mean, Anthony Weiner's wife was pregnant when he was tweeting out these pictures of himself.
Yeah, listen, this topic is it's a deep psychological topic.
It is.
Yeah, to just touch on it on a couple minutes on a radio show, you almost just have, you know, some quips or something like that. No, you're right, and I think if you think about when that happened, think about Breitbart.
Mm-hmm.
They got up on the at that Wiener conference and kind of took over the microphone.
Uh-huh.
The passion and the kind of disgust that he talked about, and where people, I think, whether it was Clinton or Wiener, what they didn't like was the lying about it, and the just coming out and being so, you know, passionate on their side of like, I didn't do this, until the evidence is put right in front of them, like, well, almost to the point of, here's the picture, you know, here's the metadata, the new terminology on your tweets, Mr. Wiener, until they finally come clean on it.
Yeah.
I think that's where the people, what they don't like. I think if these candidates, whatever side, would just come out right away and just fess up to it.
And say they're sorry and sound contrite.
Yeah.
And do you think that that waiting period, that sit out for a couple of years, Wiener didn't even sit out that long, but he sat out for a period. Do you think that's helpful and those are the prerequisites to forgiveness?
No, I don't. You just use Clinton as the example for that. I don't think they need to sit out. Like you said, Wiener sat out. It hasn't been anything. He's just sat out for a couple tweets, and bingo, he's right back in there. And it's like, might win.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's looking like he will. Well, Bill, I appreciate your phone call, and you're absolutely right.
Let me call back.
Of course, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. This is a deep psychological question that I think Americans need to look at, because we are much less tolerant, for example, of a financial failure. We tend to hold that against our politicians much more so than we do a sex scandal. So anyway, to be continued on this. We'll be watching, because rest assured, there will be more where those scandals came from. Hope that you have an amazing Independence Day. God bless you. God bless this country. America, bless God. And certainly do join us again, because life does start here on the Dr. Gina Show. And you go boldly now and live the truth.